Hey, guys, how are you today? My guest that was on my show, it was a very great experience for me, both personally and professionally, to have Katie Wenger on my show today. Katie has written a book, and it's called Obstacles Under the Surface: How to Keep Your Subconscious from Negatively Impacting Your Life. And she also has a podcast called Obstacles Under the Surface. This is a really powerful statement because the majority of human beings are living in this kind of plateau, stuck place, and just kind of feeling a lot of dark things. And that's what Katie talks about. She talks about these obstacles, these patterns of thought that are literally creating the outcomes in our life. And in our conversation, she really dives into that. She dives into a lot of things that you really haven't heard before. She explains them in a unique and very life-changing way. Just in terms of her regular bio and who she is as a person, I'm going to read it, but I wanted to kind of introduce her in this way. She's a therapist. She experienced an early interest in the field of psychology at a young age, and she followed that interest, which quickly became a passion. She went to Penn State University. She majored in psychology and minored in human development and family studies. After learning from innovative and highly experienced professors at Penn State, she focused her passion on developing a career in therapy. But the thing about her is that Katie has been practicing psychotherapy for 18 years and educates clients nationwide through her company, Higher Fulfillment. I looked it up. She has a beautiful website. She provides services. She has courses. She's written that book that I described, and she has a podcast. You will gain from having her in your pocket as a go-to for comfort, information, growth, change. Like I had said, the materials offered include courses for individuals and couples, webinars, consultations, the affirmation book. Her upcoming book will be released in April of 2023, which is now. Katie's practice is dedicated to helping individuals and couples find peace and flourish through relationship challenges. She, on Instagram, is a relationship expert. She is dedicated to life change and to adding value, really, and changing people's lives. So what I ask you to do is what you will learn today is what is keeping you stuck. You will learn what are the obstacles or the thought patterns that are keeping you where you are or creating these repeat experiences that people have. Her and I also dive into the experience of women in their 20s and 30s who are in relationships that they're dissatisfied in, relationships that they feel like they can't get out of because, they're thinking that they can't find someone, their biological clock is ticking, or they're remaining single and not finding the man that they want. We connect, and Katie so poignantly explains how these obstacles under the surface are dictating the outcomes in relationships and for these younger women. So I really just encourage you to listen in and gain everything you can from the episode, because it's a lot to give, and it will help you and change your life. I'm a better person from being in her presence. Without any further ado, Katie Wenger. Hey, guys, how are you today? This is Alison from Alison Answers and Logger Counseling Services. I have a guest today who is someone who basically does what I do. Like, we do the same things. And I just love that because I've had a few therapists on, but not a ton. And when I have, it's been super valuable, for the listeners and for me, as a person, because it's wonderful to be with someone who gets this work, because it honestly it makes me feel not that alone. Like, it feels like batshit crazy sometimes to be what we do. But anyhow, I'm just really looking forward to a really good conversation. And just to frame it for you, what you can experience during this time is like what you're going to hear is about the substance or the things that are underneath that are dictating the life that we all live. And we have an incredible expert here who's written a book, who has a counseling center, who is has a podcast, and she is a person who knows how to help people get unstuck and to locate the obstacles. Wait a minute, I got to go. The title of the book. I need my glasses, people. I've said it in the other thing, but I just love it so much that I wanted to repeat it. The book that she wrote is Obstacles Under the Surface. And we all have them. I have them. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. I want to frame this for you. As you're listening, consider the areas of your life that you possibly are afraid to look at, or they feel too painful to look at, or there's somewhere inside of that they're blocking where you want to be and the patterns that they're creating. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce you to, now she's going to be my friend. She doesn't know it, but she's going to be my friend, Katie Wenger.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Such a
Thanks for
pleasure to
having
have you.
Yeah, thanks, Alison.
Mhm. So what I would love to know is just a very short, unless it's a long, great story about how you landed where you are. I mean, I know you've had all the education and all of that, but what has given you the passion to help people get unstuck and to find really the life they want?
Yeah, so I think through all the years of therapy and working in group practices and now being out on my own, I was really looking for having that freedom to be creative and to develop plans for people that were very individuated. And, working for yourself, having your own practice allows you to do that in the manner that you see best for not only, the practice of psychotherapy, but in each individual client that you have or each couple. And all the information that I accumulated over the years got me thinking over, a span of time that how do I help the people that get stuck? How do I help the people that have been coming in for a couple of years, have made great progress, but they're still not where they want to be? And so to me, that indicates that there are still some things that are stuck there under the surface that either the client themselves don't recognize, or they don't want to look at, or they've spent years and their subconscious has been trained to hold it down or compartmentalize it because it's too painful or uncomfortable to face. And that's really where people need to get the guidance and work on bringing that to the surface and pushing through that discomfort. And when you get on the other side and feel the relief and that you feel unstuck, it feels worth the pain and discomfort, although it is really tough to watch people go through that. But that's our human condition, how we move forward and find those healthier versions of ourselves.
I love that so much. And I just want to ask you more about that, because I find, we were discussing this off recording. I find that even after all of these years being a therapist, doing what we do, supervising people, whatever, I still find those dark moments, and they still feel as scary to go through as they did before, maybe even possibly scarier, because it's, and I do know, I have noticed that, so I'm curious. I think us having the knowledge that, okay, I'm in this, I'm going through this, I'm looking at these places where, wow, holy shit, I'm doing the same thing I did when I was 25. How does this happen? It just like freaks me out. I'm like, and then I ask myself wise questions. That's what I try to do. Like, oh, Alison, like, do you not feel worthy of this, a better experience? Like, I'll ask questions like that or whatever, but I want to hear from you what you would, because like, think about it. Like, I know that it's happening, but when I'm in it, I don't know that I think I think this is my life. I'm never getting out of this emotional state. And like, I'm going to be depressed forever. Like, seriously, what do you do with that? I'm going to get my own therapy session out of this shit right here today.
Right?
Seriously,
Why
I'm not
not?
kidding.
Yeah, sure. I think it took me into my 30s to realize that I had really put myself into a box of who I should be and what my identity should be comprised of. And my expectations personally were always so high that, like you're saying, I didn't let myself go there, or maybe it feels more painful going there because of our knowledge of what that can feel like or what can happen coming out of that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to challenge that view of yourself. But I do believe that throughout our journey of life, that we are constantly changing and evolving and adding things to our identity and our personality. And I say the same thing to couples, that they are constantly evolving, not only as individuals, but what their relationship looks like.
Yes.
So checking in on that every few years, what have you found new about yourself, or how do you think about this now? And how are we going to merge these different changes in ourselves to, like the old saying, grow together, not grow apart.
Mm.
And I really do apply that to myself, and probably just within the past 5 years have been open to who I really am as an individual and honoring that. And we had talked a little bit before about this idea of putting yourself first and prioritizing yourself.
Yes.
I frequently get pushback on. People think that that's selfish. People are raised to think that that is selfish. But I never approached doing that in my personal life until recently, until the past few years. And it has made me better at all the other things that I do. And it's made me happier and more accepting of myself. So it is hard to go through the dark parts, and it is hard to look at yourself. But I think the reward is so worth it that keeping that in mind helps get you through.
It's really true, knowing that you're creating something in the midst of it. That does help me, but I have to remind myself. I have to remember it. I think even just putting a note on the refrigerator, like, you're gonna this is building something in you, And just to piggyback on what you said, because I just think it's so important, because there's so much all over social media about you loving yourself and putting yourself first and all of that stuff that we're hearing. And I think, as we know, like in psychology, like we'll say, like, could you operationally define the term putting yourself first? Like, because everybody kind of has a different meaning of it. So I think, like, to me, we've been sold such a bill of goods. Like, nobody has meant to sell it. It's not like a deceptive practice, but I feel like we've learned that the only way to love is to put ourselves second, on the back burner. And all I see, and I know because we've discussed it, we see women resentful, doing everything, pissed off, men too, just like, when you're continually neglecting yourself, you don't show up well. And so I really like what you're saying. Like, we were just discussing that. I know when I love genuinely, give myself love, not some woo-woo shit, just like really like appreciate even my weaknesses. I'm just not mean to myself, is love. I show up generous, loving, confident. I'm a better human for you. I'm better able to serve, right?
Right. And one of the perspective shifters that I often say to my clients is that you have to remember that you spend majority, if not all of your life in your own mind. Why wouldn't you want that to be a kind, loving, welcoming place? Why do we want it to be judgmental and mean and full of critique? You know, it's not necessary. We write our own story.
You know what? I think I might have heard it, but I feel like I've never heard that before. But it's so obvious. Like, who are you with the most?
Right.
And like, probably the majority of the people who are listening, I guarantee it, are basically abusing the shit out of themselves a lot of the time. Because even like me knowing this, I know that there's so much of that happening, but there's also the best friendship that I have going on too. Allie, you got this, But I mean, if anybody hears this, I know it's going to add value. So could you tell us, how would you help someone to locate, so like, I feel like the evidence is what life is returning to us. We can see like that's where the pattern is. This is the obstacle. How do you help somebody find the obstacle, the thing that's creating that stuckness, and help them break free?
Well, you said it in the patterns. That's really the key. And that seems so obvious. But it's almost like you have to write it down on paper. I have this big whiteboard in my office, and being able to draw out these patterns, and that we keep repeating basically the same scenario throughout our life.
Yes.
Hoping for the result that we want. And you just keep getting the opposite of that. You keep getting the result that you don't want. You keep getting the heartache or the disappointment or the failure. And breaking out of that makes us feel like we're doing something wrong and we're being counterintuitive, but it's really the key to success in everything. And the other thing that I have people pay specific attention to often people have, 3 or 4 specific thoughts or themes that keep coming up.
Yes.
If you look at them, you can trace them back to where did they start and why are they necessary? Because again, going back to, how we function in our own minds and the thoughts that we think all day, they are usually the same type of thing that we are giving ourselves this message that we're not paying attention to. If you keep pushing yourself to be the specific way, that's not in line with your life and or where it's going. Not all of it is within our control. That acceptance piece is huge. I talk about that in my book. I know all of us therapists address that with our clients, and it's really tough that we want life to go a certain way, and it doesn't go that certain specific way for anyone. For some people, there's more curveballs or tragedies than others, but it's what you do with that. It's kind of like we're following this story that we don't know where it's headed, and we get to make certain choices here and there, but you just go with it. And that's how you come to peace with yourself and with what's happening around you.
You know what I try to practice, like when, because I've had like my share of like pretty serious tragedies actually, but a practice that I've done, and I'm sure you've heard it a million times, everybody on here has heard it, but this is not happening to me, this is happening for me. How can I utilize this to see all the things that I don't want so I can create what I do want? How can I allow this to, like, my husband died by suicide 2 years ago. And one of the things that I had to do very, very early on was to decide, and believe me, it's not natural at all, like even a little bit, to especially, I own counseling centers. Think about it. Like, this is what we do. and it happens right underneath your, I mean, forget it. Like there's so many layers of problems internally for me with that. But I knew that with my kids, like I had to say, and I said it like to them, and we just talked about it, like we have to somehow, I don't know how, gain more than we've lost. It could take a lifetime, but we have to do that. We have to, and then note it. So I kept a note by my bed, a journal by my bed, and I would write, today, what I did notice that was a gain was that we all stayed in the living room together, and I was looking in each of my children's faces in a different way with this appreciation, and I experienced something differently than I ever would have experienced if this didn't happen. Or, whatever that, I had these counseling centers. I suddenly had to stop working. I couldn't work, but I still had them. So I was working my tail off. I've seen like 50 clients a week, but I loved it. But it forced me to do what had to be done so more people could be seen. It took me out of the business, out of the inside of the business, and work on the business. I never would have been able to do it because I loved them so much. So, I'm just giving those examples. Is that what you mean? Like, is it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think working with what you're given in that moment, even though you would change it in a heartbeat if you could.
Yes.
But where does it take you? And, I believe we're meant to go in a certain path or direction that we can't see and we can't control. And, that's where we find peace, is stop fighting it. And I love that perspective of looking at your kids. And I think that's what made me change part of the things I was doing that I felt like I had to do, but didn't feel genuine or didn't feel true to my identity, is looking at them and thinking, what do I want to teach them? Do I want to teach them to fill this role, to fill this mode, or do I want to teach them to be true to themselves? And if they like this instead of that, or their personality is more like this than like that, I want them to be who they are and not feel ashamed about that, to feel proud of it, that it makes them different. And I knew that it had to start with me modeling it first. So, when my kids were little, it was different than now when I have two of them are teenagers, and I think I only have a few years with them left at home. And I have to teach them these lessons of how to be in the world. And most important to me, for them to be happy in the world. And how do I have to show that, I have to live that. Yeah. And so some of the things I was doing, or that I felt that I should be, or that other people expected me to be or wanted me to be, I stopped caring about. Yes. Yeah.
There's like 3 things that you said that I don't want to forget. I feel like I have to put it on a shelf. That's what I do like in therapy. Let me put this on the shelf and remember this. But, like one is like being what other people want you to be. And when you were talking, and this really stood out to me, this is another thing, is the thing when you're saying you're looking at your thoughts. Like I recognize that we do that, right? But the way that you said it was different for me, because you said, look at the common thoughts, the ones that, because we know that like 91% of our thoughts are they're on a loop. They're just repeated, the same thoughts as yesterday. But what I loved is you described a thematic, like there's these themes. And I do notice like certain thoughts that have just been there forever, like a sentence. And you can hear people say them. Like I remember my mother would say, it's a little more complicated than that. It's a little more complicated than that. I'm like, shit, this woman's complicating her life. Like she just sees everything as complicated. And she did do that. It was chaotic and complicated. But she needed things to be that. But then like, I notice a thing that comes up for me that I don't know, it's just a sentence. And I was thinking that I was responding to the sentence, but I was actually, the sentence would happen. And then, wait a minute, I thought I was having an emotion, and then the sentence was responding to the emotion. But then I started to notice, oh, I say that sentence. Then I look for reasons for it. So the sentence is, I don't want to feel this way. And I am telling you, it still comes, that damn sentence. I don't want to feel this way. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, what am I feeling? Things are tragic and bad everywhere. But actually, I was just fine 2 seconds ago. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Is that what you're talking about? But I love the theme, like a few together. Do you have like, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, do you have any like examples? Like, I love that idea.
Sure. So, I mean, one that often comes up, I think, is body image, that a lot of my clients bring up, is looking in the mirror, and whether it's, related to a way that you've always seen your body, something you don't like about your body, or seeing ourselves age. People get stuck in that self-judgment with that. And I, for a long time, have tried to reconstruct that, to think that it's more reaffirming of yourself as an individual and your identity, that no one else will age and look like me. And I should kind of watch that process as an observer rather than trying to change it and say what I think I should always be, or what people are looking for. That kind of idea comes up with my clients a lot. And I teach them, of course, one of the first things is to stop looking in the mirror so often, to refocus on other things and to focus on being healthy rather than being perfect. And that really applies to everything that we talk about, but specifically your physical image. And so clients bring that up a lot. Clients bring up a lot of discussion about the dating process and what that looks like. And it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, I have such a different perspective. And I explain this to them probably because the clients I'm thinking of are in a very specific age group where they are sometimes even late 20s, or they're in their 30s and they haven't met the person that they want to be with, or they're in an unhealthy relationship and they're focused on, I don't want to end the relationship, or I don't want to just keep dating because I want to have kids. I think, the last thing you want to do is be in a position where you are raising children in an unhealthy atmosphere. 100%. So if I help them to relax, really narrow down what they're looking for, and not accept even a little bit of those red flags when they come up, because it's valid and it's your intuition. And the more you stop pushing yourself maybe to look for the characteristics, again, that you think that you should, the right person often comes along. And people have a lot of anxiety surrounding that, especially women who feel like there's this age, there's this timer on having children. So that's a big topic.
Isn't that interesting? I think for you and I who have had children, and who, I so wish, and I know that there's young women listening, like I so wish I could just hold their shoulders, and like forecast for them. Like there's probably nothing that could, I mean, maybe there's other things, but what could ruin a life more than being with someone you don't want to be with, or somebody who's consistently hurting you? Like, if you really think about that, and there's so many young women who are in situations like that, and don't know what to do, and they don't feel like they can't leave. They just feel it's like almost like literally, I said like being taken hostage.
Right.
So I just, how like once you've lived something and you look back, because I had that when I was younger in my 20s, like I don't think, I mean, I'll do a contest with women, but I don't think I had like a worse boyfriend than a boyfriend. One of the boyfriends I had, there were quite a few, but one really was probably the worst boyfriend that ever existed. So, and I just felt like I could not leave. It was like, it felt like impossible to me. And it's like that, what you're describing, this unconscious obstacle, like to go through the pain of leaving, like that intensity of facing yourself, or to live in chronic pain. I think that,
Right.
right,
Yeah,
right. Isn't that like the choices?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking all about change and bettering ourselves and becoming healthier for ourselves. But the statistical reality is very few people actually change. You know, not everybody thinks like this and seeks out this information. And so going into a relationship or staying in a relationship where you think, okay, they have these few flaws, they'll grow out of that, they'll change, we'll talk about that, we'll find a way for it to work, for us to make it work together and kind of figure all this out, I guess the best way to put it. And that rarely happens. And those things that you saw, those flaws or those things that hurt you, that you either thought would change, or you thought, well, I can live with that. That's not a big deal. He or she has this, this, and this. So, you know, nobody's perfect kind of thinking. But it's terrible to live that way. And, you know, I really remind people to listen to their intuition. And if something feels wrong or not like a good fit, get out of that situation immediately.
It's not a good fit if it feels wrong, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
You know, it's weird. Like when we're talking about, I never thought we were going to talk about this. So it's like, but I know that some girls, like there's women here that need to hear this. That's probably why we're having the conversation. But you know, that experience when you're like, I know that there's people out there, women who just have no idea that they don't have to have this experience. And like we have that one power we do have is a power to choose, right? The power to choose. And the thing I just wanted to ask you about, what you think about that, it's kind of like philosophical, like cultural thing. Like I feel like we've been taught just everywhere that relationships are adversarial, that they are, you know, you have to just accept it, you know, because, you know, nothing's perfect. That's what made me think about it. But, you know, but it depends on, again, operationally define the word perfect. You know, I don't want perfect, but I want perfectly imperfect, like somebody, the right person for yourself. Yeah. So like, what do you think? I mean, I really think this is just in line with everything that you're doing and that we see. It's like what we believe we're achieving.
Right.
Like if you believe relationships are adversarial, you will not leave a relationship that's adversarial because you don't know that there's another option, right?
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, or you know, as I often remind people of, the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, you're more often going to pick the devil you know, because again, coming back to comfort level. But, and then you add into that, if you're getting pressure from family or friends to stay in that relationship, then forget it. You're going to stay. I mean, 95% of the time.
I bet you some chicks leave guys today after hearing us talk. They better.
Yeah.
Keep a dime in your shoe by the door or whatever. Anyhow, but so in terms of like the what we were just discussing, these sentences, or you know, that's what I'm calling them, these thoughts, right? I feel like they're like these concepts, right? What do you help people locate, and like how do you help them, I guess, dislodge, or you know, I'm not using your language, but become free?
Well, I think as soon as you allow your rational brain to take over rather than your emotions, you can talk yourself through it. And thinking that something is imperfect and that kind of ruins the day or ruins the task or whatever it might be is not rational. And, you know, even I talk a lot with people about internalizing their, how they perceive other people reacting to them or things that people say to them is usually not about them. It's usually the person's own internal dialogue that they're responding to.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because they make a face at something that you say or make a quick dismissive comment, it doesn't mean it's because of something you said wrong. And people think about that over and over again. You know, did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You are yourself, and counting your wins at the end of the day is much more important than focusing on what you should have done or could have done better.
I mean, how many people are a prison of that? It is just, that's a plague. I love what you just said, because I wanted to ask you about the concept of what other people think, but that thing that you just described right there about, okay, they looked at me a certain way, right? So now, one of the things that helped me tremendously in my life was when I made the decision, and it sounds so like elementary, but it really was a big deal for me, like to decide to embrace like being wrong, and like really wrong, like really like horribly wrong. It's just, and because I watched my friend do it and she'd be like, oh yeah, I did do that. And just, I was like, oh my God, like I love you. I want to be you. Because she was so okay with being wrong that it just was like fascinating to me. And it changed me.
And I love that she didn't justify it then.
Yes. She
You know,
just owned it.
Yeah.
So this is true. You know who David Goggins is?
Yes.
Okay. We were just, I just went to with my entrepreneurial group, we just went, and he was one of our speakers. So he spoke to us. And one of the things he said that was so cool, I just loved it. He said, yeah, you know what? I embrace being wrong, because people are asking, like, how do you deal with like what other people think? He's like, they're like, Ed Milet, he's like our mentor. He said, like, I know you don't care what other people think, but like, how? Like, he would really want to understand it. So he said, well, what it is that I'm a studier of David Goggins. I go in, he goes, and I don't study anybody else. And he goes, and all I want is the truth. I always tell the truth, and I allow whatever the truth is. And he was poignant, because, you know, he's tough, but he said, he goes, so if I do something wrong, and he curses, so I'm going to curse. He's like, I do a fuck ton wrong. He goes, but if I do something wrong, I'm like, yeah, I did that. But then what I thought was funny, what he said, yes, I did that. Fuck you. That's what he said, which I thought was so funny. But I genuinely don't think he meant that in a defensive way, because he's just kind of making it funny. But
yeah,
like, he was talking about owning all of his imperfections, because every night he goes home with his journal for hours, this guy for hours, and he will determine what he would like to improve 1% that day. So if he was wrong, he owns it. He goes, you own it now. You don't work. And yes, fuck you. You don't like it. I own it. It's true. That is something I should not have done. But that's it.
Right.
I'm not going to perseverate over it. Right. Because I'm a human being. I'm going to correct, which I love that. I want to be him when I grow up.
Yeah, I listen to him all the time. He motivates me greatly. And I think that the more people that listen to him, the better. He's very beneficial, his outlook in life and what he's learned.
Can I ask you because this is always like the ongoing, I think it's one of the biggest struggles, what other people think. How do we get over that shit? Just seriously, like, really? I mean, I've gotten better and better, and I care less and less, but I care less about that idea of owning being wrong. What do you think? Like, how do we help people get unstuck from that?
Well, it reminds me of what my mom said to me when I was a teenager. I was talking about something self-judgmental and or being left out of something, maybe with friends or maybe a boyfriend, who knows what it was. But I remember her saying this on multiple occasions. She said, I know you don't believe me, but the older that you get, the less you will care what people
Yes.
think. And
Yes.
you will, if you want to go see that movie, you're going to go see that movie. If you don't get invited by that group of friends, then it matters less or not at all. And it has been true for me. I have been able to let go of more of it as I got older. And I think also being conscious to not judge other people
Oh, I love it.
gives you the freedom to care less if they're judging you. And because that guilt isn't there. And that
Mm.
is one of those obstacles under the surface, I think, that it often comes back to is guilt.
I love what you just said. That is so insightful because, like, I know when I'm judging someone, it's because I'm afraid or I feel threatened, right? But that right there, I never thought of it that way, that I would not worry what other people thought if I was not thinking bad things. But it's really also true. If you don't lie, you don't really suspect other people lying.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I believe everything everybody tells me. Just like people are like, oh my God, that's crazy. Why do you believe that? I just do. Just,
Yeah,
but
you're right.
I don't know why I'm drawn to tell this story. It's silly, but I was like feeling sorry for myself for a few weekends in a row. And I was like, oh, I have no friends, which I have tons of friends. I have no friends. I have nothing to do. It's the weekend. It's another weekend. I'm alone. And I'm a person who loves to be alone. I love to read. I love to be in nature. I am not a person who needs other people. That's probably why no one calls me. But anyhow, the point is that I got stuck in some idea like, I really would like to go out. And then I'm like, but I
Mhm.
can't go out. I can't go out. And then I'm like, well, who says I can't go out? You know what I did? I did the most devilish, crazy shit. You know what I did? It's so weird. But I literally put on the cutest dress, high heels, and I went to a place that actually had like a DJ and dancing. No one knew I was alone.
Yeah,
And
right.
I danced. I didn't let anyone, the men, like grinding on me. I stayed away from that. But my point is, I enjoyed I said, I am what? Because I don't have a friend to accompany me. Suppose she was in the bathroom. Wouldn't I have fun?
Right.
So I did that. It was like a very big milestone for me to do. I I
Yeah.
didn't do it. Oh, I did it another time too. One other time. I
Yeah.
went to like and
Go
sat
and do it.
at a bar in a very nice place, but and I ate dinner with the bartenders and we just laughed and had a great time. And I've never, I mean, I've gone places alone because I travel, which I'm fine with being alone, but the intent to go out like as a woman alone, like I'm with my friends, but I'm not, was
Right.
different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's kind of like living alone. Once you prove to yourself that you can do it, that fear is gone and it opens
Yes.
up different possibilities to you. And you're not tethered to, waiting for an invitation or a friend to be available or whatever it might be. You just go and do something in life if you want to do it.
And we have so many options and so many choices that we forfeit, right?
Right. Yes. Out of fear or out of, that's not something that people do by themselves, or it's not something that
Yes.
women do, whatever it is. Yeah, or it's not something someone in my age does, or not a mom doesn't do that, and so you restrict yourself and then you're not as happy. So
That's good. We need to, and I feel like so much of what has to happen, I'm kind of a rebel when it comes to like what society has taught us, even in psychotherapy, like what we learned in school and stuff.
mhm.
I was a little afraid to bring that up, but
No,
I
I'm with
mean,
you.
oh, good. My sister there. Yeah. I mean, really, yeah. I mean, I
Sure.
believe in a totally different Yeah. So there's so many antiquated systems, like, I mean, so many, I think, just the the system of mental health and the way people are treated, and just that cold,
Mm.
I'm better than you kind of attitude, which is just to me, just, I'm not going to go totally into it. I mean, unless you want to, but I just really, I feel like so many of us need to break free from these like systems of thought that we're all just following because we want to be liked or belong, right?
Right. Or in that instance, be successful. And I think that you're more successful when you are making it your own, like I said, or you're creating the approach that you think will work best for that client or for your clients in general.
Yeah.
And that has been part of the most fulfilling part for me of my career. And then being able to be creative in the ways that I put that material out there outside of my clients, like you are doing a podcast and writing and just putting all the knowledge that we've gained and that we can discuss with our clients, making that available to everyone makes you feel more fulfilled in your career. And I think also helps you develop new ideas because you're thinking through it on the academic side of things. So,
Yeah, it's very true. And
yeah.
sharing, like us having a conversation, like I'm going to be different walking away from the conversation just for what I'm going to apply to my life today. That's different. We hear that because you can hear the same things, but when you hear it differently from a person, like it is a different experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes it takes just hearing it in the way that resonates with you the best, that
Yes.
allows it to stick with you or you to be able to integrate that into your thinking. And, when you're having those thought patterns or those same three or four thoughts are coming up, you're able to replace it with something healthier that it has to resonate with you in order for it to stick. And you say that back to the thought, and then the more that you practice that, the more that becomes the habit and the norm, and you don't talk to yourself in such a mean way anymore, a judgmental way.
Yeah. What we practice, we get good at.
Yeah.
So, like, what would you say back to the thought? I,
Well, just in that situation, I think where you can say, your example was about it's always so chaotic,
oh,
right?
about my mom. Yes. Yes.
And
Hmm.
then you notice that you would think that
Hmm.
sometimes.
Hmm.
Or there was another one that you gave too that
About,
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Was it my mom who said it, or?
No, I think it was
Oh,
about,
what I said. Oh, I don't like the way I feel.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That you didn't like the feeling.
I
And
don't like the way I feel. I must have said it like a billion times since I'm a little kid. Yeah.
yeah, I think replacing that with my emotions are healthy and natural. And the other thing I think is key for people to remind themselves they're temporary. So if you don't like how you feel now, doesn't mean like it doesn't mean you're gonna feel that way for the next 10 years. It means you probably
Yes.
feel that way for a few minutes, maybe longer. Maybe you need to just go to bed and get some rest because you're so depleted that your brain isn't functioning at top capacity, and you move forward. You will look back and realize, oh, I thought I would feel sad forever when that happened with that person,
Yeah.
or I heard that, but I feel better now. And it's not like we notice the moment when we start feeling better as often as we notice the moment when we start feeling bad.
Such a great point. It is so true. Right.
It
And
is.
being like aware, like what you're saying, like I find that with the thought, and I know we have to go, we have a hard stop. I can't land things, but the thing that you were saying about emotion, what I find so fascinating about that, it's from you mentioned being an observer, and like I think about like being a wise observer of self, like what David was saying, like studying yourself, being aware of what's happening, being in the now, and not, well, there's so much noise that's keeping us away from hearing that thought that's directing me, like thought I just described is directing me.
Right.
So what I try to do when I all of a sudden feel badly is I try to keep my head, heart, and feet in one spot and say, what the hell just happened? Right? Like, because it wasn't that, like, it had nothing to do with anything that was happening. I didn't even have a bad emotion until the thought told me to have one. Right.
Yeah.
And it's deciding all this, probably most of my life decided that I should be in situations that I don't like, that I don't feel good. Right.
Yes.
Holy.
I think so. And I think reminding yourself that it could be because you are hungry or dehydrated, or you haven't exercised, or you haven't gotten enough sleep. Sometimes at the end of the night when I'm worrying or I'm feeling negatively, I think, like, I just need to go to sleep.
Yes.
I need to get some rest, and I will wake up and I feel better.
Put the baby to bed. Like, she's cranky. Right?
Yes. Yeah. We don't apply that to ourselves as adults.
No. We look at somebody else and we're like, oh, they're tired.
Mhm.
Us, we're like, oh, what's wrong with you? Right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, Katie, I don't want to end our conversation because I'm loving it, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to actually learn that skill myself to actually end things on time. So I'm going to do that. And I just want to, first of all, I would like for you, everything is in the show notes, but I would like for you, and there's also an intro, but I'd like for you to share where people can find you. And I know that what's in your book, I can tell you right now. I mean, anybody who's listening, I know it is of great value because I hear her, and even the title is enough. The title has changed me. It has. Because a different communication of the same thing, but it's good. So I'm encouraging people to get your book. So what would you like? Where can they find you?
You can find me on my website, which is higherfulfillment.com. You can find me on Instagram at The Relationship Consultant. I am also on TikTok, frequently posting videos at Katie Relationship Expert. So those are the top places where you can find my videos, information, the books. I have some online courses on my website. So, and you can always reach out with questions or anything else that you want to share.
Love it. Well, it was really such a pleasure to just get to know you and to learn from you and grow with you. So I really want to thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yes, thank you.
You added so much value.
Thank you. Yeah, the conversation was very enjoyable, and I think I learned a lot from you as well. It's always good to talk to someone in the same profession and be able to collaborate on ideas too, because we probably offered more than we could individually by talking together, and your listeners being able to hear what comes from the two of us and what we can agree on and build on too. But thanks for having me, and thank you to everyone who's listening as well.
Such a pleasure. It's a wrap.